Okay, today we are going to completely shatter a pretty massive historical misconception. We tend to look back at history and think, wow, people drank a whole lot of alcohol back then, didn't they? But here's the downright terrifying reality. Taking a simple, supposedly refreshing sip of fresh river water, that was actually a terrifying death sentence for your ancestors. I know, we like to imagine ancient rivers and streams as these perfectly pristine, untouched babbling brooks, right? But honestly, pounding all that ale wasn't about having a good time at the local tavern. It was about surviving a landscape literally crawling with lethal, invisible threats.
So, why exactly was everyday drinking essentially a biological weapon? Well, to really wrap our heads around why an act as completely mundane as grabbing a drink of water was so incredibly terrifying, we need to do a rapid rewind on your family tree.
We're gonna fly backward in time, right past the 18th century and those highly flammable powdered wigs. We'll zoom right past the Middle Ages with knights clanking around in clunky chainmail. We're even gonna fly past the Ice Age and the giant woolly mammoths, rewinding all the way back until we land right next to your distant ancestor, basically squatting in the dirt. At this point in history, almost every single natural water source was a total roll of the dice. They were gambling their lives daily just to stay hydrated, trying their absolute hardest not to die before sundown.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? As the saying goes, you are merely the byproduct of violent coincidences and extremely stubborn biology. Your entire life, your whole existence, is built upon an unbroken line of ancestors who somehow survived the absolute worst conditions imaginable. Consider that historical infant mortality rates were staggeringly high, and a massive portion of that was directly tied to waterborne pathogens. Literally one of the highest stakes life-or-death gambles your ancestors had to take every single day was simply trying to find something safe to drink.
Section 1. The Deadly Hydration Lottery. Picture this. Back in the medieval world, taking a drink from a local river or a community well wasn't some refreshing moment. It regularly exposed early communities to lethal, waterborne bacteria. Think about it. Without modern sanitation, these rivers and streams were essentially open sewers. They were filled with human waste, agricultural animal runoff, and just standing parasites. Because of this, everyday communal drinking habits weren't hydrating people. They were essentially biological weapons spreading disease like wildfire from person to person.
And the sheer scale of the danger? Unimaginable. Now, we usually think of the Black Death when we talk about historical plagues. But the real, relentless killer lurking in the water was something else entirely. You could literally contract a civilization-ending bout of dysentery, what they historically called the flux, or face an early cholera outbreak just by taking a sip from the wrong cup. Grabbing a shared wooden tankard in a crowded tavern literally meant playing Russian roulette with your gastrointestinal tract. It was an absolute minefield.
Section 2. Beer, a medieval lifeline. So how on earth did they survive this landscape crawling with lethal cholera? The answer is beer. Now, I know we kind of imagine our ancestors as perpetual drunks stumbling their way through the Middle Ages, but they were actually forced to drink early beer just to survive. And actually, scratch that image of a modern, highly hopped IPA. We're talking about something known as small beer or table beer. It was typically very low in alcohol, incredibly thick, like almost porridge-like, and highly caloric. This wasn't about the buzz at all. It was purely about safe hydration and staying alive. The reason this worked is just an amazing accidental cure. And it all comes down to 3 crucial steps. First up, boiling. The intense heat of the boiling process acted as a natural sterilizer. Way before anyone even knew what germs were, boiling the water to steep the grain effectively killed off the lethal pathogens. Second, the fermentation process created a slightly acidic environment where nasty disease-causing bacteria simply couldn't survive. Because of this thick, low-alcohol brew became a much safer daily beverage for everyone. We are talking adults, teenagers, and yes, even young children, who all drink small beer instead of taking a lethal chance on the local water supply.
Section 3. The Pathogen Partiers. To truly understand just how lethal plain water was before modern plumbing, we've got to look at the 19th century when humanity finally started to figure out exactly what was hiding in the water. You see, before this era, medical science wasn't exactly what you'd call rigorous. For a long time, the absolute peak of medical practice involved doctors walking around in those creepy bird masks stuffed with flowers. They were trying to essentially vibe-check deadly diseases by warding off bad smells, under the completely false assumption that foul air was what caused illness. But by the 19th century, germ theory was emerging, And some deeply reckless scientists wanted to prove exactly how waterborne diseases like cholera actually spread.
Enter the pathogen partiers. Now, what's really wild about this is the sheer absurdity of these guys. These were deeply reckless 19th century researchers who voluntarily used their own guts as living petri dishes to study these waterborne diseases. A perfect example is Max von Pettenkofer. While brilliant men like John Snow were rigorously mapping out the Broad Street pump in London to prove cholera came from contaminated water, guys like Pettenkofer took things into their own hands in literally the most extreme way imaginable.
Their methodology was absolutely unhinged. They didn't bother with sophisticated computer simulations, obviously they didn't have them. Safe animal testing? Nope. They decided the absolute best way to understand cholera was to skip straight to the main event. Max von Pettenkofer famously requested a vial of cholera bacteria and drank a nice big glass of it. No joke. They willingly subjected themselves to agonizing rapid dehydration, severe cramping, and nightmarish gastrointestinal symptoms, all to definitively prove that untreated water was actively poisoning everyone. They literally put their lives on the line to prove what you and I now take entirely for granted.
Section 4. Our modern hydration miracle.
Let's bring it right back to where we started, because learning all this really shifts our perspective on our mundane modern complaints, doesn't it? Suddenly, your fridge's water filter being a little slow doesn't seem like the worst thing in the world. The next time you kind of want to complain about your bottled water getting a bit warm, just take a second to be deeply thankful. Be thankful that your totally boring, predictable glass of tap water isn't a lethal cocktail of cholera and dysentery. That completely uneventful glass of clean water you drink every single day, it's an absolute biological miracle that our ancestors could literally only dream of. Reflecting on these incredible historical leaps really makes you appreciate the unseen science holding our modern world together. Hey, if you found this explainer into our deadly past fascinating, I am currently on a personal mission to hit 1,000 subscribers. We love diving into these wild historical survival stories and the crazy origins of everyday things, and your support in helping us reach that goal would mean the absolute world to me.
So stick around, hit that subscribe button, and keep questioning the bizarre world around you before natural selection does its job. But before you go, just consider this. If our modern water treatment facilities went offline tomorrow, exactly how long would it take before we were forced right back into the Middle Ages, brewing thick, porridge-like beer just to survive the week? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.